Hi there. This video will examine the disassembly and reassembly of the Tokarev TT-33 pistol. There are a couple of methods which one can use to disassemble the pistol to do a basic field strip, and we're going to show you both of those common methods. The first thing to do with any firearm, of course, is to verify that it's unloaded before you proceed with disassembly. So we're going to remove the magazine, see that it's empty. We're going to open up the slide and we're going to check the chamber area. You can see that there are no rounds present, so now that we know that the pistol is safe, we will proceed with the first method of disassembly, which I'm going to show you. And it's the one that I generally would use. Some people don't like it because they say it bends your recoil spring up, but I don't really have a big issue with that. The first thing we have to do is remove or push to the rear the clip which holds the slide stop in place. There's a slide stop, and there's a little ridge at the end here. You can sometimes use your thumb on these to move them. Quite often though, they're difficult to move because they're under a fair bit of tension. So I like to use a non-marring tool like a brass punch. I've seen people use things like screwdrivers as well to move those. You get a better angle on this. Trying to work around the camera is always a bit of a trick. Alright, there we go. So with that pulled back, we can now remove the slide stop. Just give it a push out from this side. Set our slide stop aside. Now, when you're removing the slide from the frame using this method, it's very important to keep your thumb down here above the dust cover, because the spring is going to buckle out. It's going to want to escape. So if you keep your thumb there, it won't go flying. So we can set the frame aside. Now, we're keeping your thumb over the spring. You can grasp the end of the guide and pull it out, and then ease your spring out. And as you can see, there was no buckling of the spring. I've seen some people say that your spring gets all bent. It is a spring. It will bend to a considerable degree before there is any damage done to it. So there's our spring and guide rod assembly. You can pull those pieces off the and clean underneath them if you need to, or you can basically wipe them down with everything intact. The next item to be removed is the barrel bushing. This part here. Simply turn it 180 degrees, pull it out. With the barrel, lie the barrel link flat, lift the back of the barrel up a little bit. Once again, trying to work around a camera is always tricky. And push the barrel to the front and pull it straight out. So a pretty straightforward kind of a Colt style of Colt Browning style of barrel assembly. Alright, we'll move from that. We'll move on to the frame. And the frame is pretty straightforward to deal with. There's basically almost a fire control unit or a hammer unit, and it's just set in the back of the slide here. You can simply pick it right out, and you can clean everything you need to clean pretty much by scrubbing in around all that. We're left with the frame. Now the grips can come off the frame as well. As you'll notice, there are no screws on the grips. There's only a couple of screws in the whole pistol. There's one that holds the I think the firing pin retainer in, and you've got one in the magazine release. So there's not a lot of screws in this pistol. But how the grips are held on, this is going to be hard to show. There's a clip inside here, and it's going to be almost impossible to see in this light. There's a clip inside here which is rotated on an axis pin. So it's basically just a matter of pushing that pin to the side. I guess I might as well just take them off. It'll be easier to show you with it disassembled. You're going to need a tool to push that clip over. And with that clip pushed to the side, the grip should just pop right off. Alright, I finally got that loosened up enough to get them off. They were just a very tight fit. As you can see, they just pop out. And these grips have this tab which swings back and forth, and that tab, when it's moved, locks the grip into the grip frame. You can see as that turns over, those two tabs go out and they grab the inside edge of the grip frame. So that's how the grips are locked onto the pistol. And they're just basically a molded fit to fit in that hole. And you can see the other side of the grip there, and you can see how it's locked into the frame. I'm not going to bother taking that one off since we've already taken this one off. Okay, to reassemble, pretty straightforward. Obviously the reverse of the disassembly process. We'll put the grips back on here, and they are a tight fit in this case. Sometimes these are a little wobbly, but in this case this is a good tight fit. I might even have to go get a rubber hammer or something to give it a tap to get it to go back on. There we go. Good squeeze. Gets it back in place. And we'll move that tab back over. Slide that tab back over to where it was. There we go. So that secures the grip back on. So the next thing to go back in is the hammer unit, and that's a kind of a clever little bit of engineering. It's got the hammer and the hammer spring and the sear and the disconnector and all that good stuff all worked into one unit, which is easy to maintain because you can take it right out of the gun. So I always thought that was kind of a clever thing, and it just sits back into the top of the frame like that, same way it came out. So we'll set the frame aside. Okay, let's go back to the reassembly of the slide. First of all, of course, you're going to want to clean all the components before you reassemble. You will likely be shooting corrosive ammunition if you're shooting this caliber. Most of the surplus, I guess all the surplus in this caliber would be corrosive. So you want to scrub the bore out with a water-based cleaner. Actually, with a pistol barrel, the easiest thing to do is just put it in a sink with some soap and water and scrub it with a bore brush. Dry it off and then clean it normally with your bore solvent to remove any other copper fouling and so forth. You want to clean around the locking lugs. You want to clean the corresponding locking lugs in the slide. You want to clean in around the breech face and also around the extractor. The corrosive priming residue may get blown back around the breech face as well, so it doesn't hurt to take a damp rag and wipe around in there to get any of that residue off, and then oil it thoroughly when you're finished. Okay, so we'll reassemble this starting with the barrel. The barrel link here should be in the down position before you reinsert it into the slide, so it goes in just like that. Slide it back as far as it goes, it'll drop down into the locking lugs. Next we're going to put back the barrel bushing. The barrel bushing is installed 90 degrees from its final position so that it engages the lugs. So with the hole at the bottom, and you're holding the slide this way, you turn it back around until it sets to there. Okay, with the barrel bushing in place, we're going to reinsert the recoil spring assembly. So we'll make sure that the barrel link is in this position here, and then we'll put the recoil spring in the slide. You want to ensure that this curved portion of the recoil spring guide is upwards towards the barrel. So keeping the recoil spring under control is the main trick when you're using this method. And of course I hit the link and it fell down. So I'm just going to pop that back up. There we go. So, you can see there was no big drama there. We didn't bend the spring. Keep your thumb over it though, or it'll pop out. So with our thumb securely holding the recoil spring assembly in place so that it doesn't pop out, we'll just line up the grooves in the slide with the grooves in the frame and slide the frame back on. Now, looking through the slide stop hole, you can see that if you move the slide back and forth, you can line up the barrel link, and you can hold it in that position. Line up the barrel link with the hole, and with that lined up, you can reinsert your slide stop, and then holding that in place, you back over and push your your catch in place, and function check to make sure that everything's working. Alright, let's have a look at the second method which one can use to disassemble the slide unit. This is a method which is more similar to that used in the Colt 1911, and it is probably the one used by the Soviet military back in the day when they issued this pistol. Although if there's anybody out there who was actually in the Soviet military in that time frame, it'd be interesting to hear from you, see what method they taught to the soldiers. For this method, we're going to need a tool. I'm going to use my brass punch again, and we have to depress this tab, which is at the very front of the recoil spring, and we'll push that tab down and then rotate the barrel bushing. And we have to remember that this spring is under considerable pressure, so keep your thumb nearby to maintain control of the spring so it doesn't go flying out. And with your thumb held securely over that, rotate the barrel bushing 180 degrees, pull the barrel bushing off, and then ease carefully the spring out under control. So once you've got the spring under control and loosened up, we can now move down to our catch for the slide stop. We can push that back. Once again, I have to get around the camera tripod here. And once we've got that popped off, we can then pull out our slide stop. And with that done, we can slide the slide off the frame. And we'll set the frame assembly aside. We can then turn the slide over and remove the spring, and the same as before, remove the barrel to the front by lifting it at the back. This one's being kind of, there we go. So once again, that's brings us to the same place. It's just a different way of doing it. Reassembly in reverse. Reinsert our barrel. Reinsert the recoil spring assembly. Once again, keep our barrel link in this position. Slide that all the way through. Once again, keeping our curved portion of the guide up towards the barrel, and it should be down firmly in place there. You can see where there's a cutout that fits over the back of the barrel link. And then we'll put that whole thing back on top of the slide. Okay, and we'll reinsert our slide stop. And once again, we have to line up the barrel link with the hole so we can get our slide stop back in place. So once we're satisfied that that's lined up by wiggling it back and forth, we can insert the slide stop. Not quite there, obviously. There we go. So with that back in place, we'll push our clip over to retain the slide stop, and then we'll go back to the front of the pistol. Now, this is where you got to be careful. Push the recoil spring down and maintain it under control because there's a fair bit of tension on it. You might want to be wearing safety glasses while you do this, just in case the spring goes flying. So holding that down flush, or as flush as you can, put the bushing over the barrel, push it down firmly, and then turn it 180 degrees until the tab on the front of the recoil spring pops into place. So it's back together again, and we can do our function checks, make sure everything works, and that's plan B. The final thing we're going to disassemble is the magazine. It's a very basic standard type single column magazine, similar to a Colt 1911 style. First thing we want to do is remove the base plate, and the base plate is held on with this little tab at the front. You can see it there. You'll have to depress that tab with something. You can probably use your fingernail if they're long enough, or a screwdriver, or whatever you want to use to get that tab pushed down. Get that out of the way. There we go. And with that tab depressed, we can slide the base plate forward. Keep your thumb over the back of the magazine, over the bottom, to keep the spring in place while you pull this off. So you can pull that to the front and set it aside. and now you can ease the spring up. Now on top of the spring there's this retainer, and that is has a tab at the front. That's important to keep that tab oriented correctly. Next thing, we can remove the magazine spring. And you notice the orientation of the magazine spring. It's flat at the bottom, and at the top there's a curl. This is the correct orientation for the magazine spring. If you put the magazine spring in upside down, this follower will jam. So that's important. We can remove the follower. Notice the orientation of the follower. It's got this short leg which fits to the back, and of course the rounded part which goes to the front of the magazine. And you want to do your basic magazine cleaning, keep the magazine free of dust and dirt, and lightly lubricated. To reassemble, like I said, this is the rounded portion and it's split at the front. That goes to the front of the magazine, which is rounded. And make sure it doesn't get turned over while it's going in there. Once again, reinstall the magazine spring with the curly part, split part at the front, or the top I should say. And as you'll notice, the magazine follower can flip around while it's being inserted, so there we go. So we want to compress the spring down flush, and then put the retainer over the top with the rounded portion to the front, and that tab facing towards us while we're reassembling it. And we want to make sure that we've got the magazine spring completely compressed so that it's out of the way. And with that held down with our thumb, we can reinstall the base plate with the hook portion down. Slide that over the ridges on the bottom of the magazine body until it snaps back in place. There we go. That's hooked in place properly. Check to make sure that that's free. We'll put the magazine back in the pistol and make sure that it locks the pistol open. And it does. So that's the basic strip and assemble for the Tokarev pistol. Hopefully that's of some use to some of you folks. Maybe I'm a little long-winded on this video, but we went through both methods just to cover our bases. Talk to you later. Thanks for watching.